everyone. Welcome to this month's edition of North Central Outdoors. I'm your host, Nathan Karch. Today's big topic is boating. The weather's starting to be very nice. It's starting to warm up. Everything's green. Everybody's itching to get in the water, put their boats in, maybe for the first time for the year. So there's a lot of things that you need to know about just before you do go out in the water. And you know, some of you may know a lot of this information, but I promise, you know, some of it's going to be beneficial to you, and you may not have heard it before. So just bear with me. It's a lot of information, but it's all very relevant. And just stick with me because it's a lot. So we're going to jump right into it. The first thing that we normally check for, and all this has to do with safety. That is our number one priority when we're out there patrolling the waters. That's the reason we are out there, is for the public safety. So just keep that in mind. We're not trying to ruin anybody's fun or anything like that. We just want to make sure everyone is safe. So with that being said, the first thing that we look for when we're out there is the boating education requirement. Everybody has to have a boating license. I say everybody born after January 1st of 1989 must possess that. It's required by law. And it's simply a class that you can, you know, read through one of our booklets, and you can take it online if you are over the age of 21. If you're under 21, you've got to go to a physical testing location and take that test. It'll be proctored and everything like that. But you can normally knock it out in, you know, about 12 hours, and that includes the studying. That's not the test. The test is 60 questions, multiple choice. But it just pertains to a lot of the stuff that you're going to see on our waterways, and make sure that you're educated on those. You have to purchase a $10 permit. It's going to be a Type 600 boating safety permit that will allow you to take the test as many times as possible to pass that. And once you pass it, you will be certified for the rest of your life. And it is reciprocal. Very much like the handgun carry permit. If you go to a different state, they will recognize that boating license. So for those that are not required by law to have that, those born before that January 1st of 1989, it is a good idea to get it. We highly recommend it. It's very beneficial information. I guarantee you'll learn something. I'm an instructor for it, and I've been through the class several times, and I teach it, and I learn something new every single time. So it's very beneficial. And another incentive is for insurance companies. If you have boating insurance, they will offer you a discount if you have this class and this license. So go do that if you haven't already. It's required before you hit the water if you're born after that date, so make sure you got that. The next thing that we check for is registration. Registration is required by law for all Tennessee vessels that are powered by electrical or mechanical means. If you are just in a little John boat and it doesn't have a trolling motor on it, and it's underway by paddles or oars, you're fine. You don't have to register it. But if it has a trolling motor on it, even if you put a trolling motor on a kayak, it technically does have to be registered by state law. So we check for that often. You can purchase it in 1, 2, or 3 year increments. And a common misconception with registration is, say I buy a boat from an individual. Well, they may have it registered all the way out to 2021. And people think, well, I can run on their registration because it's current and updated. You can't. When you buy that boat, you've got to get it transferred into your name, and you've got to get new registration. You can't run on somebody else's tags. It's just like a vehicle. You can't do that. So it's got to be updated and in your name as soon as you purchase the vessel. This time of year where everybody's wanting to hit the water all at once, they're applying for new tags, everybody's maybe getting a new boat, it's that time of year. TWRA is really behind on the decals because they just get slammed this time of year. So your application is going to be just like a little yellow receipt. As long as you possess that on the boat, you're going to be fine. Don't worry about not having the decal, because normally this time of year they're about 2 months behind. So you may not get it until, you know, midsummer. But don't let that be a hindrance. You can still hit the water if you don't have that. Another thing is the registration numbers. it is going to be very vessel specific. So when you get that decal, it will tell you your registration number. Don't go by the example on the application. We see a lot of those numbers. Go to your specific number, and you have to provide that. We don't provide that. We only provide the decal. So it's got to be 3-inch block letters, and they've got to be contrasting. So it's usually going to consist of TN, 4 numbers, and then 2 letters at the end. So that's got to be displayed on both sides as well as the decal. The next thing that we check for constantly, and is probably one of the most important things, is life jackets, or PFDs. That stands for personal flotation devices. We make sure that everybody on board has one, and that everybody has an adequate number to provide for everybody on board. If they're on a big wakeboard boat where there's a ton of people, or a pontoon, there's got to be one for everybody, and there's also got to be one that fits everyone. If you have a handful of use and there's all adults on board, it's just not going to suffice. They all have to be Coast Guard approved, so make sure that all yours is Coast Guard approved. They're readily accessible, and they're in good working serviceable condition. So if there's an emergency situation, you're able to go and get those and grab them really, really fast for a person in distress. And we do encourage you to wear them, but if you are 12 years of age or older, you're not required to. If you're under that 12 years of age, you've got to have that life jacket on at all times if that boat is underway. The only exception is that if you are moored or at anchor. So 12 years and under, have it on all the time. We realize that they're very uncomfortable. They're really, really hot. Your maneuverability is, greatly altered. We realize that, but technology has come a long way. Just make it a point, if you have children, set the example, wear your life jacket too, because they're going to be more likely to put it on and consistently wear it if you're wearing it as well. And also, go to a sporting goods store and pick out a good life jacket. Try on a few, make sure that they're comfortable with it, they know how to work it and everything, and that they like it, because they're going to be more apt to always wear it if they really like it and it's comfortable. That being said, we wear the inflatables, which got the pull tab, and there's also got a little automatic sensor. Once it hits the water, it ingests a little bit of water, and then it automatically inflates. Those only count if you have them on. So if you have them stashed away in the boat, those don't count to your overall quantity of the life jackets on board required for everybody to have. So just keep that in mind. And you cannot have them if you are operating a jet ski. So it's got to be what we call inherently buoyant. That means as soon as it hits the water, it's got to be able to float. That covers like all your neoprene Coast Guard approved vests that you normally see when you think of a stereotypical life jacket. That's what you got to have to operate a jet ski or a personal watercraft. The next thing, it's also a flotation device. It's required for vessels 16 feet and over, is a throw cushion. It's a Type 4 throwable device. Most people know it as that square cushion. Most people sit on it just to get a better vantage point, a little bit of elevated position when they're towing somebody, a water skier or wakeboarder. But it has handles on the sides, and it's basically meant for emergency situations only. When somebody is fatigued, distressed, and they're struggling to stay afloat, you can throw it out there, and it's really easy to throw. It doesn't have a lot of wind resistance. If you've ever tried to throw a life jacket, they catch a lot of wind, they don't go very far. That's the reason you have to have this device. The ring buoys that you probably have seen before at swimming pools, a public swimming pool or a hotel or something like that, those will also suffice. Those are perfectly fine. Those count, but you're most commonly going to see those square type cushions, so that is required. You only have to have one of those on your boat if your vessel is 16 feet or over. The next thing is a fire extinguisher. If you have an encapsulated fuel tank, you are required by law to have a fire extinguisher. Periodically, just check it, make sure it's in good working condition. Those that have the gauges, it's very, very easy to read. If it's in the red, it's bad. If it's in the green, you're good to go. But just periodically check that, maybe every 6 months or so. And it's always good to have a backup as well. For those that have the push tab ones, make sure that that little insert is in there before you test it. Push it down. If it pops right back up, you know it's good. If it doesn't pop back up, it stays down, you know it's bad, you need to discard it and get a new one. The next thing, if you are planning to stay out after dark, make sure that you have working navigation lights. Those are your red and greens and your all-around white light in the back. We consistently see people out there, they plan to stay after dark, but they don't ever test them until, you know, it is dark and they find out that it's not working. So test that before you hit the water, just to make sure they are working. Keep some spare bulbs, keep spare fuses, because all that, you know, jostling around, hitting wakes all day, something is bound to break away or something like that. So just have spares on hand for any situation that may arise. The red and greens are basically your navigation lights. So those are not meant to emit light for your navigation purposes. That's to be seen. That's for other boaters to know the orientation of your boat. That way they know what way to navigate around you. It's just to help them out. If you are trying to locate buoys or anything of that nature, you can carry a spotlight. A lot of people run these LED light bars, and then some boat manufacturers have those stock docking lights. But hence the name, they're docking lights. They're to help you park. So you can't run with them all the time. You can intermittently flash that light to find whatever you're trying to locate, whether it be a buoy, sandbar, whatever. If there's an obstruction that you know about, locate it and turn it back off because it drowns out all of your navigation lights. The stern light, or commonly referred to as the anchor light, that is your all-around white light. Make sure that that is visible from 360 degrees. By law, it's required to be the tallest point on your vessel. A lot of manufacturers, they have really small stern lights, and you know there's many obstructions. Even if you're sitting in a seat, your entire body might be obstructing the view of that all-around white light. So make sure that, you know, if it comes from the factory with one of those small ones, get a taller one so you can be seen all the way around. If you have an aftermarket wakeboarding tower or a bimini top or anything like that, just be aware that that could be obstructing that white light's view from 360 degrees. So maybe get it a little bit taller, and then after that you'll be perfectly legal. The next thing is buoys. A lot of people aren't familiar with the buoys or orientation of it. Your green ones, they're referred to as cans, and then your red ones, they're nuns. So think about it this way. You're at open sea and you're returning home. You're going upstream. So when you're out at open sea, you are always going to see the red ones on the right. So it's going to, the term is red right returning. So always think of it that way. When you're going upstream, you're always going to see the red buoys on the right, and these are channel markers, so always stay in between them. If you're going downstream, the green ones are going to be on your right. So that might help a little bit. Always make sure that you're staying in between those, because I know on Old Hickory, where we are right now in the Cumberland River, we have, you know, we can have really narrow channels, and it's vital that you stay within those, because if you veer off a few feet, you might run up onto a sandbar, hit a rock, hit a submerged tree. So you gotta stay in between those. There's 4 other buoys that you will consistently see out here in the waterways. They're all going to be white buoys that are going to be outlined in reflective orange tape, and they are going to have different symbols in the middle of them. If it has a square, it's going to be for information. A diamond is going to insinuate danger. That is going to be marking off a submerged rock, submerged tree, maybe a sandbar or something like that. Just, you know, use caution and get around that buoy. And it's usually going to be right on top of where that obstruction is in the waterway. The next one is going to be a circle. That's going to tell you that there's a controlled area. Most of these areas are going to be no wake zones. You're going to see those next to boat ramps, all marinas, and things like that. Be mindful that, you know, due to a lot of traffic and everything like that, especially on some of these navigable waterways as the Cumberland River, there's barges that come through. So they may hit some of those buoys, they may take them out and they might not be in the proper location. Also due to, heavy rains, strong currents, floating trees and stuff like that, they get knocked out of place, so they might not always be in the correct position. Always refer to a nautical chart. It's going to have the topography, elevation, and it's going to tell you exactly where the main channel is, and it's probably going to show those buoys on a map. So most manufacturers nowadays come stock with the GPS and Navionics app, whether it be Humminbird, Lowrance, or Garmin. Just be mindful of that. But the very final one that you need to know about as far as buoys go is going to be the diamond with a cross through it. That tells you that it is a restricted area. It's very, very dangerous. You're generally going to see that above dams where there's a spillway and there's a possible threat of you going over that dam. You just need to stay out of that. Always stay on the outside of those buoys. The next and final thing I want to talk about, we've really seen a peak in paddlecraft, especially on some of the smaller rivers, the Harpeth, the Red River, the Caney Fork. Just be mindful, there are fishermen out there. We all have to use the waterways, and we've got to get along. If you're in a kayak, it's not required by law that you have navigation lights per se, but you must have a light to basically signal to other watercraft that you are in the area. So my recommendation is always stay pretty close to shore. Don't venture out into the main channel, because a lot of bass tournaments happen at night, and if these bass boats, they're capable of going 60, 70 miles an hour plus, there's no way that you can get out of the way of them, and they're not going to be able to see you in time. So make sure that you have a light, and if you hear a boat or something like that, make sure that you shine it in their direction so that they can see you. There is no registration requirement for paddlecraft or anything like that, so you're good to go. But make sure that you have a life jacket on board. The throw cushions don't count as life jackets. It's got to be Coast Guard approved. You can have it on board. You don't have to wear it in paddlecraft, and that goes for these paddle boards as well. You have to have a life jacket on that paddle board. It can be strapped to the back. You don't have to wear it, but it's got to be present. And the next and final thing is these jet skis. As most of you know, they don't come stock from the manufacturers with navigation lights. In the history of jet skis, there's never been one manufactured with navigation lights. The reason that is because they must get off the water at legal sunset. So from legal sunset to legal sunrise, they're not allowed on the water, period. It doesn't matter if you equip them with aftermarket navigation lights or not, they still have to be off the water at legal sunset. So on a clear, really nice day, it might not get dark until 30 minutes after legal sunset, but you just got to be aware of what that time is. We do have a grace period depending on the environmental conditions. If it's foggy and rainy, obviously it's going to be back down a lot, but just be mindful of that. I know this is a lot of information to take in. If you have any questions whatsoever, please email me at nathan.karch@tn.gov. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And then you can also contact us at our Region 2 office. I don't know that number off the top of my head, but you can go to our website and email them or call them, and you can ask for me if you want to. I'd be happy to answer any questions. But that is it for this month's edition of North Central Outdoors. I hope everybody has a wonderful month. Get out there on the water and enjoy yourself, but be safe. And thank you. We'll see you next time.